Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning from here.
I'm going to just take care of a couple of little tasks. Chris, can you pin? My name is Mary Ellen Kirkpatrick. I'm SPC at Ocean Compassion.
What you look
like. And a couple of other people I'd like to introduce. Urs is our center manager, and Kim Wynn is our center director, and everyone else is our community of people. Very happy to have you here this evening. On behalf of the center, I would like to offer a quick mandala on behalf of all of the people here and all of the centers. So I'm just going to do it in English. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I see this as a Buddha field and offer it that all beings may enjoy this pure land. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, O precious gurus. So I don't think I need to introduce you to anyone who is here, but I would like to tell everybody about the format of this program. We've submitted some questions in advance, and would you like to answer them in the order you or as you see fit, or would you like me to read the questions? Or
yeah, you can just read them out, and then I will. That way, we have a dialogue.
Very good. Good. Okay. So I guess we're ready to begin. The first question was, I have been studying Buddhism and consider myself a Buddhist for 7 years. I've had good teachers explain to me the basic principles through the gradual approach to the Lam Rim, and I have benefited greatly. Yet it is often said that beyond Sutrayana path and that the Vajrayana path is like rocket fuel towards attainments. Please help me to understand this. Why does the Vajrayana stage become like rocket fuel? And might you give guidance on how to enter these esoteric teachings in order to absorb them fully and into the heart?
Well, basically, the point is that by the Mahayana regards this Bodhisattva path as being very long, very arduous, 3 incalculable eons to get to Buddhahood. And I think at a certain point, people thought, oh, it's just too much, trudging along the path to Buddhahood. And so as a reaction to that almost, there came the prominence of, on one level, the Vajrayana, the Tantra, also in Hinduism at that time, and also the Mahamudra and Dzogchen approaches, which said all we need is to recognize our innate Buddhahood. That's enough. And that's always with us. All we need is to recognize it so it can be instant. So the Tantric path, the idea was that according to traditional Buddhist view, here we are, flawed sentient beings, but our inherent nature is Buddhahood. So here we are, and we have to walk along and gradually on the Bodhisattva path through all the bhumis. Finally, we will attain to our Buddha potential. But it takes an awfully long time with lots of fallbacks. But the Tantric view was that actually we are already Buddha. I mean, that's the whole point, is that our true nature is already what we are striving for. So therefore, rather than seeing ourselves as flawed and gradually purifying through all the stages, why not take our original potential, which is Buddhahood, and use that as the path? So in fact, we're using the result or the fruit as the actual path itself. And this is why one visualizes oneself as the deity. It's not that we're pretending to be the deity. We are the deity. That's the whole point. It's very important to recognize that. I mean, for example, if you, Mary Ellen, are seeing yourself, you're thinking of yourself as Tara, there's somewhere that comes in a question which somebody brings up later. This whole point that, if you're doing a meditation on Tara, inwardly we're thinking, well, I'm really Mary Ellen. Now I'm going to pretend to be Tara. And that is what we feel is the reality of the situation. Really, of course, I'm Mary Ellen, but now I'm going to pretend I'm Tara. And that is our fundamental delusion. That is our big mistake. Because actually, you are Tara pretending to be Mary Ellen. Right? And that is the point. That we have to recognize that who we really are and stop deluding ourselves thinking we're someone else. Just an ordinary flawed sentient beings, when actually the fullness of Buddhahood is already within us. So that's the first thing. If we can do that, then it goes very fast because we open up all that is already within us and recognize it for the first time. The second point is that it also in Tantra uses all the energies which normally in the rest of the path we're trying to discard, especially our sexual energy. And normally we're trying to overcome our desires and, attain to purity. But in the Vajrayana path, there are many ways in which we can use the energy to actually realize bliss and clarity and emptiness. And so those are very special yogic practices and are considered, again, very, very a quick way to get through. But the problem is that it needs a lot of application. And normally people do, first of all, in Tibet was a whole different atmosphere from where you're living in the West, and society is going one way, you're going the other way. It's very difficult nowadays to keep that pure perception and see everything as a mandala. Because when we see ourselves, for example, as Tara, we don't just see ourselves as Tara, we see all beings as Tara, or the males as Chenrezig, or the females as Tara, and this whole realm as a mandala, a pure land. So that is easier to do in certain environments than in others. It takes a lot to gain really pure perception. So Tantra is not so easy for this reason, but many people, if they enjoy visualizing and mantra recitation, some people love it, some people don't. But if one does, then it's a valid path, not just for this during formal sessions, but also during the day to keep the mantra going, to really try to see that all Buddhas have Buddha potential. All beings that we see, are Buddha, not just human beings, but animals and everything. And that can quickly change one's whole perception. But it's a discipline, it's not so easy in our modern world. But some people really benefit from it. So she should explore further and start with the more peaceful deities, usually like Tara, Chenrezig, Manjushri, and so forth. And read some books. There are many books now introducing this kind of perception. Yeah, sorry, we'd better go on, otherwise so many questions.
Well, going from there, talking about the different environments, I think maybe we could ask some of the questions that relate to culture. Let's see,
7?
Yes, number 7. Could you please talk a little bit about the way cultural tradition and the Buddhist teachings get mixed together in Buddhism, and how we can tease out the Buddhist teachings from the cultural traditions in a way that aids our practice without complicating it?
Well, when I first met my own Lama Khanpa Rinpoche, one of the first things he said was, please understand that Tibetan Buddhism is half Buddhism and half Tibetan culture. So you can throw out the culture, just don't throw out Buddhism. Don't throw out the Dharma with it. But of course, the problem is it's not like culture is here, Buddhism is here, you just go like this, because they're like this. So I think it's very helpful in this modern day that we have so many forms of Buddhism on display. We have Thai and Burmese Theravada, and we have Zen from Japan and Korea, China. And so it's good to look and see amongst all that, what are the common principles behind it all? Because Chinese Buddhism has taken on a lot of Confucianism, and Thai Buddhism has a lot of, its own animistic elements to it. It's not the way it's presented in the West, if you go to Thailand. So it's good because we see that the Dharma is like, I sometimes say, it's like liquid, it's like amrit, nectar. And so it can be put in many different vessels. It can be in a glass, it can be in porcelain, in gold, in jade, many different vessels to contain it. And they look very different, or clay even, anything. But the nectar stays the same. And this is very true of Buddhism. Everywhere it goes, it takes on the culture that it finds in that country. Buddhism is very adaptable. But it's very surprising how the basic principles don't change. 1,000 years after it's all been split up and gone around in all of Asia, the basic view, the basic ideas have remained remarkably untainted by the culture which has taken onto it. So it's important to understand what is basic Buddhism, and one can do that, to see what is, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, impermanence, karma, rebirth, and so forth. All these things are very intrinsic to the Buddhist view of life, the idea of circular existence going round and round and round, not starting here, ending there, everything a circle. And that, what we do and say and think, our intentional thoughts, and are planting seeds which we will harvest in the future. How to get rid of the kleshas, our anger, our greed, our jealousy, and our basic ignorance, the understanding that we're not who we think we are, that this self that we cling to is a delusion, that our external reality we project mainly. Now neuroscience is also agreeing on this, so it's a very exciting time for neuroscientists too. Discovering what is consciousness. Oh, sorry, I don't know. So these principles, these basic principles are shared by all Buddhists. And that's what how to tame the mind, how to train the mind. By training it, it transforms. And finally, we transcend our conceptual mind. This is common to all Buddhist schools. How you get there, a little bit different depending on the culture, but the basic principles, even shamatha, vipassana, is the same. It's remarkably the same considering they've been apart for 1,000 years. And yet when they all come together, like in the Sakyadhita International Buddhist Women's Association, where we have Buddhist women from all over the world, and especially Asia, all coming together from so many, many different cultures. But they all just look at each other and recognize we're all Buddhist women, isn't that wonderful? And we all see things remarkably the same. So the culture is important. If you're in that country, you need to, respect the culture. But it's very important not to mistake the culture for the Dharma. Like, Tibetans have 7 offering bowls. Well, in the Tibetan culture, you are very careful to have your 7 offering bowls. The Buddha didn't carry 7 offering bowls around with him. I mean, this is part of the Tibetan way of doing things. You don't see that anywhere else. And so, yes, you can do it if you'd like to do it, but it's not part of being a Buddhist. It's just part of Tibetan culture. So sometimes people grasp more at the culture than the Dharma, but we can discriminate if we look and see what is common within everywhere.
So the fundamental teachings is one of the questions is there a Lamrim teaching? Is there a Lamrim in the Kagyu tradition, the way there is in the Gyalwa tradition?
Of course, because the Lamrim comes from Kadampa. Atisha. And the Kadampa then went eventually into the Gelug. But Gampopa, who was, one of the founding fathers of the Kagyu tradition, was a Kadampa monk, right? He was a Kadampa monk, and then he met Milarepa and learned the yogas. And he combined Kadampa teaching with the yogas, which he learned from Milarepa, to make the Kagyu tradition. And then he wrote the Dual Ornament of Liberation, which is a Lamrim text. So Lamrim was going long before the Gelugs got on board. But of course, Tsongkhapa with his, his vast Lamrim Chenmo, what can I say? I mean, he made the Lamrim of all Lamrims, and nobody could go beyond that as far as Lamrims are concerned.
There's another question in here about the different traditions in Tibetan Buddhism. The question is this a reflection of cultural rivalry or something else?
The tradition came about originally, I mean, in the 8th century, Guru Padmasambhava went to Tibet at the invitation of the king, Trisong Detsen, and he established Buddhism in Tibet and founded the first monastery of Samye. And so during that time, for the next few hundred years, there was only the Nyingma tradition. Then in the 11th century, since it was getting a little bit, nobody really was understanding the real principle of the thing anymore. It was getting very much into power, which often can happen with Tantra. So then there was this whole resurgence of interest in finding what is the true Dharma, what about the philosophy, what about the practice. And many Tibetans were going to India, and many Indians were invited to Tibet, including Atisha. And so therefore the lamas that went, the monks or practitioners, yogis, who went to India, they met with various siddhas there. For example, Marpa, the translator, he went to India and he met with Naropa. And then he brought back teachings from Naropa and Saraha. And others went and met someone called Virupa, and he brought something back and started Sakya school. And so the various Tibetans went to India and they met with great masters there, brought their teachings back, and then started their own circle of disciples. And these became the various lineages. So it wasn't they were trying to rival each other. It's just that they were bringing in this whole new inspiration, which they were getting from India, along with inviting people like Padampa Sanjay and Atisha and others to come to Tibet to help them with translation and to further along their understanding of how to practice and to understand the Dharma legitimately, authentically. So then those traditions, because it goes from master to student, some student becomes a master and passes it on. So in this way, all these lineages created, some of them died out, but many of them, the four main ones carried on, and then they made sub-branches and so forth. But it wasn't out of rivalry. It was out of trying to contain the authentic lineages and teachings.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's bad when it then becomes very territorial, you know, human beings being what they are. But in general, the lamas themselves often get teachings from many lineages in order to, you know, broaden their appreciation and understanding of the whole path. Because each lineage emphasizes certain aspects more, you know, like one is more scholastic, one is more yogic, and so forth, but they all include everything. Every lineage has great scholars. Every lineage has great practitioners. If they didn't, they would die out, right? So it's just a matter of which one, you know, calls to you. It's not that one's better than another. They're all equally valid, all equally good, and all equally produce results.
Different minds. Yeah. There are many questions in here about karma. One of the questions was, if you engage in negative actions in your dreams, does that produce karma?
No. Because karma, the Buddha said, is intention. It's why we do it, voluntarily decide to do something, the underlying motivation behind that. In dreams, we are not making volitional actions about it. So no. For example, in the Vinaya, in the monk's Vinaya, if a monk has a wet dream, if he has a mission in a dream, it's no fault. I mean, in you know, voluntarily, yes, it's a fault, but in a dream, it's not a fault because, you know, you're not intending it. It's just what happens. So no, you can kill as many people as you want in a dream, but you won't get the karma for it. In fact, I mean, sometimes these, you know, when they're testing dreams, then I think it was Gampopa had a dream of murdering all these people. And when he told the teacher, he was in tears saying, oh, what a bad person I am. This was such an inauspicious dream. And the teacher said, no, it's a wonderful dream. It means that you're liberating many countless beings, you know, so this is wonderful. So again, you know, we can't tell what is good or bad when it comes in a dream.
Another karma question is, I heard in a teaching that the Buddhists surround us constantly, but we don't have the karma to see them for what they are. Maybe if we have in front of us a Buddha, we see it as a spider. If someone killed that being that they saw as a spider, but it was actually a Buddha, would that create the karma of harming a Buddha or killing a spider? That's question number 5.
No, because your intention is to kill the spider. Of course, that's a bad thing anyway. You know, because the spider's life is as important to itself as our life is to us. So therefore, we should respect all beings and definitely not go around killing spiders. So therefore, you know, it is not a good action. But nonetheless, it would be, the intention behind it was to destroy a spider and not to destroy a Buddha. So, I mean, the point is that we all have Buddha nature. This is what it's saying. We all have Buddha nature, even a spider. But we don't recognize that. If we had pure perception, we would be able to see the innate purity of all beings. But we can't. So we think they're just ordinary, and we don't understand that actually we're living in a pure land. We just don't see it how it should be. But no, I mean, the karma just means that we are going to, you know, what we think and say and do has always an intention behind it. And either it's of the root is anger or greed or jealousy or something negative, or the root is something positive, kindness, compassion, love, generosity, and so forth. So that is what creates the type of result which we can expect eventually, not the act itself so much as the inherent intention behind it. So that's the point. So even if you kill a spider, it's inherently not good because it's based on the root of rejection and anger and hatred and so forth, and the desire to harm. So even though it's a little spider, it can have a big karmic result, depending how much you don't like spiders.
And then I think in a related vein, question 11, to make silk cloth, silkworms are killed, and making leather things requires killing. Then there's a string of pearls in a mandala set where each one represents an oyster's life taken. I can avoid contributing, but not by not purchasing these products now. But what should I do with the silk and the leather and the pearls that I have?
Well, of course, nowadays people are becoming, certain people are becoming much more conscious of what lies behind the things which we take for granted, like pearls and silk and so forth. Traditionally, most people never even thought about it. I doubt very, very much if the average Tibetan has a clue that pearls come from oysters, or even about silkworms, because they buy their silk produced from, well, now India, but also from China. They didn't produce it themselves. So they had no idea of the number of lives which actually were sacrificed to make these desirable objects. Now that we are becoming much more sensitive, then of course one would feel uncomfortable using this, but Tibetans don't. So my feeling is, I thought about this one. Either you can throw them all out, or you can offer it to your local Dharma center, because they won't mind. And the oysters have already died. The silkworms have already died. So whether you use them or you don't is not going to affect the source of those. So if you pray very hard that they might have had a good rebirth and come back as something better than an oyster or a silkworm, then I think that would purify it. And from now on, you won't use those anymore. But may all those that have sacrificed their lives for this, may they all have higher rebirth. And by using as an object of prayer and of offerings, may this connection also help them to go upwards and create much merit for them.
Very good. That kind of leads into, I'm not sure, there are probably some more on karma, but do all Buddhists believe in reincarnation? Thinking about the oyster and the pearl, is there a difference between the doctrine of rebirth and reincarnation?
These are Western terms.
Yeah.
Some people feel that the idea of incarnation, reincarnation, gives the feeling of something solid and real, like a soul going on, the same soul in different roles, in different lifetimes. And they feel the word rebirth is more fluid and is closer to the Buddhist view that our consciousness is like a stream. It's not just a solid, thing which it just goes the same thing unmoved lifetime after lifetime. So therefore, many people prefer the word rebirth, but this is in English. It doesn't come in Asian language. That distinction isn't there. So what's the question?
Do all Buddhists believe in reincarnation? Is there a difference between the doctrine of rebirth?
Yeah. In Asia, they do. I think so. you know, the way that Buddhism has been transplanted in the West has often been taking those parts which will fit in with Western, not so much with Tibetans, well, also with Tibetans, but like in Zen and in Theravada, they take out the meditation part and present that as the whole path. Whereas if you go to Asia, you will see that's only a part of the whole picture. And there's a lot more going on than just Vipassana or Zen, sitting. You know, sitting is only a small part of the total conduct, even of monks and nuns. And in fact, the interesting thing is that, you know, in the West, if you say to anyone Buddhism, they think meditation. Whereas in Asia, very few people meditate. It's considered very specialized. Certainly lay people usually never meditate. Maybe Burma now, they do more, they have meditation centers, but in general, they make offerings and they keep Shila, ethical conduct, especially on certain days. And they have lots of devotion, tremendous devotion. And that's mostly it. They are devotion and they're very, very generous beyond their means with joy. It's one of the things you notice in Asia is that people give with so much joy in giving, even when they really can't afford to give. But and others rejoice in the giving. It's a very beautiful thing. But meditation, not. Meditation is considered something very specialized and difficult. But when it's taken, and especially Zen, you know, from Japan, which is very minimalist anyway, and they leave out all the doctrine and just focus on sitting, then it cuts off a lot of what is actually parcel of this that goes along with it. But because it was considered to be not, you know, Westerners would not like that bit. It doesn't fit in with their preconceptions, right? So therefore they take that bit which will be easily digested and leave out the other more indigestible bits, not allowing you even to chew over it, you know? So people get the idea that Buddhism, you know, like Zen Buddhism doesn't have rebirth, doesn't have this, doesn't have that. It's not true. If you go to, like, especially Chinese Buddhism, because even in Zen centers in Chinese Buddhism, most people's main practice is to pray to Amitabha to be reborn in his Pure Land. I mean, all Chinese Buddhists are Pure Land Buddhists, even if they practice Zen. That part is left out. And so it becomes not real in some ways.
There's a question in here too about the Pure Lands. And also, well, actually another one that's kind of related to that is number 10. A lot of Westerners stumble over the concept of guru devotion. How would you introduce that to Western Buddhists? And then I'll find the other one.
Ooh, well, nowadays, of course, that's a real live wire. It's unfortunate, but it's so what she say, you know, open to misuse that and abuse, that it's become a very difficult subject. But the basic idea is that the classical example is that the sun is always shining. The sun can be very powerful. We're talking about India. Sun, very powerful. And you put a piece of paper in the sun, and the most that will happen is it will get very dry and maybe a little crinkly. But if you put a magnifying glass to bring the rays of the sun down through the magnifying glass onto the paper, within no time at all, the paper will start to go brown and smoke and burst into flame. So therefore, it is the the sun is compared with the blessings of the Buddhas, and the magnifying glass is the guru, who concentrates all the blessings of the Buddha and then can give it to the student. So the idea is that if our hearts are open, we can receive the blessing of direct realization of the nature of the mind, of our Buddha nature. Another example was of like if we're in a room and the sun is again outside shining, but if we close all the doors and pull the curtains, we cannot complain about being in the dark. In other words, the Guru's blessings are always there, but we have to be open from our side. And Trungpa Rinpoche put it that there is like a corridor with two doors, and the Guru's door is always open, but whether our door is open or not for the blessings to come through is up to us. So this is Guru devotion. And in order to help with the Guru devotion, this is where the problem comes. That, I mean, this is the way to recognize the nature of the mind is to get the blessings of the Guru. But in order for us to have pure devotion, we have to have pure perception, which means that we should see everything the Guru does as perfect, the Guru themselves as like the Buddha, that we should not see any faults, and that we should open ourselves completely to whatever they do and recognize whatever they do is done out of their wisdom and compassion in order to benefit us, even if it might seem to us very difficult. It's in order to reduce our ego and to open up our hearts to receive their blessings. So the principle is excellent, but the chances for abuse are great. Because if everything the Lama does is done uncritically by the students, you're not allowed to criticize. If you criticize and see faults, it's your problem, not their problem. We can see that this is open to all sorts of shenanigans. Because if the Guru is not so perfect and he has no boundaries and everybody's worshipping him and all his shadow side comes up, it can create enormous trauma. So this is why recognizing this could be a problem. The Tantras say we should spend up to 12 years examining the Guru before accepting them. In other words, we should not be naive. And just because the Guru is charismatic, because they have lots of Dharma centers, because they've got cute little dimples when they smile, because they're very eloquent, because everybody says, wow, what a great Lama, that's not enough. We have to really look and also see what are the students like. My Lama said 20 years ahead. Look and see the older students. How are they? Would you want to be like that? What is the dynamic within the community, etc.? So we can take teachings from Lamas. We can even take empowerments from Lamas. Doesn't mean you accept them as your root guru. And so to not be naive, to examine carefully and really think, do we want to commit to this person? Is that really the person that we trust? Because it's like a small child with the father. You know, it's the one person that you're going to trust to protect you, to help you, to teach you. And so then if the father is not a good father, it will damage the child for life. So we have to be very, very careful. And this is coming up a lot nowadays. So it's from the disciple side to open up the heart and not be too critical, but at the same time, keep your eyes open and look at the whole mandala around the teacher. Is that really what I want to be involved with?
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. The other question, I thought I had circled. So, well, let's go in a different direction. Question number 12 is, when I first met the Dharma, I got all excited and took a bunch of empowerments that I didn't understand, and now I can't keep the commitments. What can I do now so I don't end up in the Vajra hells?
Worry not. All yidams, all deities are one in the Dharmakaya. So if you practice one, you practice them all. Don't worry. One Lama I knew, he said to me when someone was bringing this question up, he laughed and he said, look, I'm a lineage holder, so I probably had about 20,000 empowerments during my life. Because, you know, they have these long ones where 6 months you're getting ones all the time. He said, am I supposed to keep the commitments for all of those? And he just laughed and laughed. And so it's not just me, I'm saying this, but all the lamas say the same thing. If you practice one yidam, you're practicing them all. So therefore, even if you cannot do a long practice, you can do a short practice, just a short practice, and even just a few mantra. That's enough. Don't worry about Vajra hell. It's not going to happen. You have to be really, really, really bad to go to Vajra hell. I one time asked my Lama why it was that everything we do, there's a hell realm for it. You know, it's very discouraging. And he laughed and laughed. And he said, oh, we just write like that to frighten people into being good. Which doesn't work because good people get frightened and bad people could care less, you know. But he said, actually, it's very difficult to go to hell. And you have to be a very evil person who enjoys cruelty. The kind of people who enjoy harming others and delight in others' suffering, they're going to have a bad time. But most people who are doing their best and make mistakes, but, you know, they're sorry for it, they're not going anywhere. And certainly if you can't practice all the empowerments you took when you hadn't got a clue what you were taking anyway, you didn't really even get them. You know, at one time, His Holiness the Dalai Lama was giving the Kala Chakra and, you know, to maybe 100,000 people, the way he does. And at the end, he said 2 people got that empowerment. And most people thought that was his 2 tutors. And another time somebody went up to, after a Kala Chakra, they went up to some Westerner and said to His Holiness, oh, thank you for giving me the empowerment. And His Holiness said, oh, did you get it? So that's the point. Unless you really know what you're doing and you're following all the visualizations and you're really seeing the guru as the deity and going through all the you know, all the stages of the ritual, understanding completely what you're doing, not really getting it anyway. So don't worry. And in any case, just, you know, if you bring all deities into one and practice that one, even in a shortened form, that's enough. Don't worry.
This question came out of a session of Buddhism in a Nutshell, which is a very introductory course that we had at our center. And one of the people asked, it said that the guru is all the Buddhas. Does this mean when someone reaches Buddhahood that they become part of a single being, like a collective soul?
No. The nature of the mind, the genuine nature of our pure consciousness, which is our Buddha nature, is compared to the sky. It's compared to space, right? Because space is all-pervading, but it's ungraspable, unseeable, untouchable, tasting. You can't see it, and yet it's everywhere. Even ourselves, our bodies, our minds are all space, right? So, and it connects everything. It's the interconnection, not the fact that we're all one big globule. So like the sky, which is vast and all-pervading, our mind, our original mind, our primordial, non-dualistic mind is locked at the moment because of our dualistic thinking. within our brain center. But that is not the true source of the mind. The primordial, unborn, deathless consciousness is beyond all that. But you can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't grasp it. And it's non-dual, meaning at that point, there's no sense of I and other. There's just this interconnection with everything, including all nature. And so don't think of it as just one big solid lump. Think of it as open, vast space. Where does space finish? It never finishes. And everything within it allows everything, because, you know, your room is full of furniture, but that furniture can only be there because there is space. But the furniture itself is space, right? This is why His Holiness is so interested in quantum physics, because they're saying exactly the same thing. And also nowadays, neuroscience, which is also saying how it's all a projection. It's not just what's coming in here, but it's also more what we're projecting out from what comes in here. So this vast open interconnection with everything is what it means by saying that everything, it becomes like Buddha. And that's what we have to realize. All Buddhist paths are trying to realize that. The Buddha called it he called it the deathless, he called it the unborn, he called it the unconditioned. It's nirvana. He hardly talked about it because he said you can't talk, because the minute we try to talk or think, we are using conceptual thought again. And it goes beyond our conceptual thought. And yet it's the source of our conceptual thought, right? We couldn't think, we couldn't be aware if we didn't have this pure unborn awareness. But we don't recognize that because we're so caught up in our thinking. That's the problem. So we don't recognize the open, empty spaciousness of it. Emptiness is also like space, you know, it's not something nihilistic. It's something very open and luminous, which is what we all are, but we don't see it. We can't recognize it. So all we have to do is recognize. Then we see our interconnection with everything, not separate little globules, right?
That kind of, Donna sent a question in that I sent to you, I guess on your last night or this morning. So it's question 19. She said, I have read the teachings from masters that say the world is the mind that sees it, or under the heading of pure perception, samsara is nothing other than how things appear to you. As someone who tends to look at things with a more critical mind, how might one look at everything being pure or nirvana without becoming Pollyanna or becoming ungrounded and losing touch with reality?
The point is to recognize that so much of what we perceive is our own perception, and that is very much contaminated by our kleshas, by our afflictive emotions. So what we see is what we ourselves project. I mean, I will send you this, I don't know if you've seen it, but somebody sent to me recently a short, it's about 14 minutes, I think, presentation for TED, TED, TED. I will send it to you. I think it's brilliant. He's a British neuroscientist, but he's obviously of Indian extract. But he's saying exactly what Buddhists have been saying for the last 2,500 years, that what we receive through our senses, the brain itself cannot know. It cannot see, it cannot hear, it doesn't know the outer world, except from the information it gets through the senses, which it then creates its own image, depending on past concepts. And that is projected out to us as our reality. And so each of us has our own reality. And what is consciousness? He says now they are really studying. It's not something mechanistic. it's something beyond everything, and they're trying to understand what is consciousness. So I think that's very exciting, because if people can have it put to them in scientific terms, they will begin to understand it more. It's not some weird kind of Asian concepts. It really is how things are. And the fact that they knew that so many millennia ago, without any of these machines, without any of these, they just realize it within their own mind. Of course, that realizing it within your own mind completely transforms your concepts. The other nice thing which this neuroscientist said was that this consciousness which we have, we share with all other beings. And they show an octopus to show that the same consciousness in all these other beings as we have, and that we're not separate from them, that we all share the same. And I thought that was very important and beautiful. He sounded like a really nice guy, but he obviously was originally Indian, so he probably had Vedanta and Buddhism in the back of his mind, although he didn't mention it, of course, to put people off. So that's the point, is that we project what we see. And if our mind was pure, we would project things in there's a story in the sutras of which Ananda is complaining to the Buddha and saying, well, all these other Buddhas like Amitabha and Akshobhya and so forth have very beautiful pure lands. And here you are, a Buddha with such a funky pure land. Look at it, And the Buddha said, oh, Ananda, there's nothing wrong with my pure land. My pure land is completely pure. It's your mind that's funky. And that's what you perceive. We perceive what we, so it's not a matter of being Pollyanna, but it is a matter of seeing the inherent potential in all beings, so that when you look at someone, you see their Buddha potential. All beings have that Buddha potential. Isn't that beautiful? Of course, in the meantime, they're all messed up, but never mind. That is impermanent. The genuine reality is their perfect Buddha nature, which they don't recognize, they don't know, and that's where compassion comes. The wisdom sees their Buddha nature. The compassion comes because they are ignorant of Buddha nature. We don't recognize who we really are and our own potential. How sad. Isn't that tragic? Look what a mess we're making. And we're at the same time creating so much negative karma and destroying our planet, destroying each other. And yet, potentially, we're all Buddhas. That's so sad. So when you see others, you recognize their potentiality, but at the same time, you recognize, there's ultimate truth, which is that all beings are Buddhas, and the relative or conventional truth, which says in the meantime, they're messed up sentient beings. And so, you don't act like, you're not naive, but we do recognize that this is just our delusion, and that behind it all, something else is happening. Something else is happening, really, that we just don't see because we are so blinkered.
I put the link to that TED talk that you sent in the box.
Yeah. His name is Neil something.
Yeah. So
you know it?
You sent this morning. You sent me the link, and I put it in the chat box. So now everyone in this meeting has it.
Good.
TED.
Yes, I think it's brilliant. I mean, in such a short time, he's presenting so much. I'd love to just sit down with him, get him to talk slower, and really explore some of the things which he just threw out, in such a short time that he had to say so much. But I found it very encouraging. A while back, I met this neuroscientist who was an Indian, but he lives in America, a very eminent neuroscientist. And he gave a presentation on the different, neural pathways, et cetera, very interesting. But at the end, when I spoke with him, I said, look, but what about consciousness? And he kind of went, oh, and then he said, that is the elephant in the living room. We do not discuss consciousness. We have no idea. But this neuroscientist was saying that's exactly what they're doing. For 20 years, they've been examining consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think that's very encouraging. And not that they'll ever find it in the machine, but they will begin to recognize that it is something underlying, even though you cannot catch it. And the fact that they're discussing it and thinking about it and recognizing it is not mechanistic, it's not the neural pathways, is for the future, I think it's a very, very fascinating aspect of science.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I watched it this morning. It was excellent.
It's very interesting what he's saying. You know, you wished he had a longer time to say more.
Let's see. I have a question here that I skipped when we talked about karma. So, I found the Pure Land question. We studied the Lam Rim that it's best to be born in human form, but then we're also encouraged to pray to be born in a Pure Land. Why would it be better to be born a human when in a Pure Land you hear the teachings from the Buddhas?
Well, exactly. I mean, one time I was going through a text at a center here, and when we got to the end of the text where it was saying to get reborn in Amitabha's Pure Land, one of the women, who I know is a real bodhisattva and spends all her time helping others, she burst into tears. She was so upset at the thought that she might go to a Pure Land rather than come back in human form and be able to help others. I never heard anybody crying about the thought, horror. She was just horrified. She was shocked. She'd never heard of Pure Lands before, and she really didn't want to go to a Pure Land. Now she's changed. Now she's praying to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. But it was a very interesting reaction. And I think the advantage of the Pure Lands is exactly that the motivation behind it is to fast track towards attaining the kind of wisdom and unconditional compassion that we are able to come back into the human realm and be of help. Because when one looks at the educational system and the political system and the social system, it's very, very hard to come back as an innocent little baby and be able to cultivate all the qualities needed to really be able to help others and at the same time make advance on the spiritual path. I mean, who wants to come back and go through the educational system again? Unless you have that real inner confidence of your wisdom. So therefore, at this time especially, it makes more sense to try to go to a Pure Land, really get some genuine realizations, and then come back. And then one can really be of benefit. Because otherwise, I mean, even the most good-hearted people in the world, they just burn out, you know, and they just completely, you know, they lack all charge by the time they finish. They need to charge up again. And so it's very hard for people to not only benefit others, but benefit themselves in, you know, on the spiritual path at the same time, unless we have genuine realization. So that's why they're praying, not just so that you can, it's not like heaven where you just hang out and have a nice time and make, you know, use of all the good karma you made before. And it's a very sensuous kind of existence. It's not like that. It's purely for, you know, accelerating oneself onto the path to gain realizations as soon as possible, in order then to reach out and maybe even send out many emanations, as the great beings do, to benefit all beings in the various realms of existence, not just on the human realm, but in the hell realms, in the spirit realms. I mean, there are many realms of existence, not just those 6 which are shown in the Wheel of Life. And how to help them if we ourselves are, you know, our understanding is still incomplete.
And the karma question was, people who live in areas that have experienced terrible fires recently have collectively created the karma for terrible fires to happen. But if someone moves out of the fire zone prone area, that doesn't purify their karma. Will those kinds of disasters follow them?
Well, two things here. One thing is, if they have the karma to be able to move out, then that's the karma to be able to move out, right? Others didn't have that karma. But also, we should remember that everything that happens is not necessarily karma. And one of the things which could happen is climate. Even in the Abhidharma, it says this. One of them is natural disasters and climatic changes. So the fact that there are climatic changes or natural disasters might not necessarily be your karma. It's just what is happening in general. This is one of the things which happen, not just karma. But then if it is definitely not your karma to be harmed, even with these external climatic changes, then you won't be harmed, right? Somehow you'll be able to move. So that is also your karma. I mean, like if we have karma to be sick, right? We all get COVID or something, then that is because that's what is happening. Well, it might be your karma to get it, but then you don't just say, right, that's my karma, and you sit there. Then you try to do something about it, because that's also making karma, right? So karma is not just fate. You know, it's changing moment to moment, depending on our choices within that situation, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a toothache, you can choose to sit there and think this is the result of my bad karma, so I have to go through it. Or you can go to a dentist, right? That's your choice. And then if you get a good dentist or not, you know, but things happen moment to moment to moment. The important thing is our response to those things happening. And how we respond is creating future karma, right? So every moment we're eating up the past, and in this present moment, creating the future. But how it goes is not set in stone, right? It all depends on our choices, skillful or unskillful. And then it all changes, you know? So that's the point. You know, we shouldn't become fatalistic.
Very good. Then there are a number of questions about retreat, the retreat that you did.
Just 1 minute, I get myself some water.
Oh, certainly, certainly. Somebody's put in the chat box. Let's see. Oh, I guess we are finished. Just about. It's just after 8 our time, so I think we're a little bit late to wrap up. Can we just ask? Good. Okay. The questions around the retreat were, what was the most challenging thing that you faced during your retreat?
Oh, the mind. Undoubtedly. I mean, you know, when one is in retreat, the one thing one has to deal with is one's own mind. When one is separated from outer distractions like other people, or in the West, like televisions, telephones, computers, anything, and one is just in a situation where all one has is one's own mind, then the mind itself will create its own entertainment program. Memories, fantasies, things will come up to keep itself amused, right? And so that is the big obstacle, challenge in retreat, to really tame the monkey mind and not give in to it, because one can get swept away very happily and spend hours and hours just getting caught up in one's daydreams and fantasies and memories. Don't do that. Keep very strong mindfulness and keep to the program. So this is always the any challenge wherever you are in retreat, is to observe the mind at all times and not become the master of the mind instead of being the slave drawn away, not just in retreat, but all the time. But often people succumb to outer distractions. In retreat, one is faced with one's inner distractions. So that is always the real challenge in being in retreat.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to someone who's just beginning their first solo retreat?
I would say enjoy. Because if we enjoy something, then it's not difficult. You know, anything which we enjoy doing, even outwardly, it might seem like a difficulty for other people and effort, but for ourselves, it doesn't seem like that because we're happy doing it. So that's the first thing. Enjoy it. Relax. Don't push too hard. Don't expect any results. Don't look to the goal. Just do it to do it, right? In the beginning, keep the sessions fairly short, but do them, and then gradually work into it and get up speed, and then gradually decline again back to ready for going back into ordinary life. Be very clear what you're doing. Know, understand exactly whatever practice it is, understand it. So then no doubts come up. I always advise people to do group retreats first with good guidance so that they understand how to do a retreat, and also the questions which might come up initially will have been answered by the person guiding the retreat. And also you get discipline, because if you're in a group retreat, you know, if you get bored, if you get sleepy, if you think, well, maybe I'll have a cup of coffee and start again, you can't do anything. You have to sit there, right? You can't get up. And so this gives us a discipline, you know, this is the time to sit, so we sit. It's not, do I feel like sitting? Don't ask that question. Just sit. Don't do too much. Because if we push too hard, we often will get another reaction. Make it feel like you're making some effort, but not too much effort, so that you're moving, but you're not going to get breathless and collapse. And and keep the mind in the retreat. The Tibetans have a saying, body in the cave, mind in the bazaar. And so not like that, right? Keep your mind and your body together, right? So don't start thinking about your family, your job, your this, your that. Let that go. Just be centered on what the practice, ever the practice is, do it. But relax. So it's this awareness, but a very open, spacious awareness, not a tight, don't get tight. And as I said at the beginning, enjoy. Because if we enjoy something, then it's easy. And if you're not enjoying it, doesn't matter. If you're bored, if you're thinking, what am I doing? Oh, I'm not getting anywhere. Oh, it's getting worse. Oh, my mind's crazy. Doesn't matter. Just relax. Just keep doing it. That's all. Just keep going. And don't also judge. This is a good session. Oh, that was a useless session. The fact that we're just sitting there doing it, that's enough. But yeah, keep awareness, try to relax into become one with the practice you're doing. Then enjoy. And, don't, as I say, wonder, what did I get from that? It's not a matter of what we get, it's just the fact that we're doing the practice. And then at the end, when we leave, just to keep that awareness going, and don't drop it. loving awareness, a kind awareness. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to Western women who are contemplating monastic vows?
Think about it. You know, it's not easy. I mean, I could go on about this for hours. Normally, when people say to me, Westerners say, I want to take monastic vows, I say, how are you going to support yourself? What's your financial position? This is a very strange thing to have to ask someone who's giving up the world. But in fact, for Western monastics, there is no support usually, except in the Theravadan system. In the Tibetan system, you're not part of the Tibetan Sangha, and there's not really a very well-run Western Sangha. One thing is, one difference is that in Asia, usually if you become a monk or a nun, you start at a very, very early age. I mean, some of our nuns are like 4 years old, but we're stopping that. But I mean, at least 10 years old. So they're grown up within a monastic environment. They learn, they memorize, they're always in a very Dharma environment the whole time. So it comes easy for them. And they're part of a community. They don't have to think about their food. They don't have to think about their clothing or medicals or anything. Education, everything is given them. So then it's very easy. And it's a good life choice. But Westerners, mostly they come into becoming ordained when they're in their mature years. They've already had their education, their secular education. They have had careers. They have often been in relationships. Many of them were married. Some have children. They're already, I say, it's like in Asia, the nuns, when they come, they're like soft clay, which you can mold into whatever form you want. You can make a teapot or a cup or a bowl or anything. The clay is soft. But Westerners, by the time they're ordained, they're already set in their shape. They're already teapots or bowls. And it's very hard to reshape them because they're already shaped. So when they come, they already have their ideas of how monasticism should be, even with no background at all. And so it's very difficult for them to live in community because each one thinks they're right. And if they live by themselves, then they feel very lonely because they are not a Sangha and they are not part of the Tibetan Sangha, but they don't fit in the West either. Most Dharma centers are lay people. And they, don't fit in with society in general because they're shaved heads on the robes, so they look odd there. But also in Dharma centers, they don't really fit in either. So they get very lonely. They feel unappreciated. People don't understand how to relate to them. And mostly they give up. I mean, even they've been ordained 20 years, at the end of it all, they say, what's the point? It's not that they give up the Dharma. They carry on practicing and so forth, but not in a form which separates them from people. To separate themselves from one group in order to be a part of another group is one thing, which is what happens in Asia, right? They become a part of the monastic group. But in the West, there isn't that monastic group. And so you're separated from the lay people, but you're not part of anything else. And therefore, it's very difficult. Also, support. You say, because no one's going to support you. I mean, it's very difficult. Most lay followers have a hard time supporting themselves and their families. Mostly they don't have income enough to support someone else as well. And so they get, how are you going to, where you're going to live, where you're going to eat, how are you going to travel, how are you going to do anything? If you get sick, do you have medical insurance? So I'm not saying don't become a monastic. It's a beautiful thing to be a monastic, but it's not easy for Westerners. It's easy for Tibetans because they have the social structure to support it. But if you're one, especially if one is living in the West, it's a challenge. And for many, it's a very lonely and quite disillusioning journey. So I'm not saying, yes, go for it. It's fantastic, all the merit you're going to make. Because for many people, I know, I've heard some heartbreaking stories. It's not so easy. This is why we started something called the Non-Himalayan Nuns Alliance, to try to help those people who are not from the Himalayan regions, you know, to at least if they want to do retreats or if they want to go somewhere to do a Dharma course or do studies, we can help to fund that a little, so that, and to just give them a bit of encouragement. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's not an easy journey. It's not an easy choice. It looks like very romantic, but actually, for many people, it's yeah, it's not so easy. I mean, I'm always very admiring of those who don't give up, especially if they live in the West, because it is quite lonely.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Advice from.
But it's not good to hear. It's sad to hear.
It is very sad to hear, but it's good to hear plain speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have to face the reality of it. You don't belong anywhere.
Yeah.
And the lamas are not too much help because they don't understand. They never had that situation themselves. And so they're thinking of the Asian Sangha, you know, and how nicely that's all set up. And they don't recognize what a problem it is when you're, you know, you're living not in Asia. And even in Asia, you see, you can't fit into a Tibetan nunnery. The language is Tibetan. Everybody is from Himalayan regions. They have a totally different culture, a lot of emphasis on ritual, a lot of emphasis on memorization. For a Westerner, unless you start very young, it's almost impossible to fit in.
I think the last question, and then we will let you go on to your day, is what have been some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned living in a monastic community that we might use in learning to work together at Dharma centers in the West?
Well, I think that the most important thing is harmony. A lot of the Vinaya, the monastic code, is rules for maintaining harmony within the monks or the nuns. And the Buddha again and again praised a harmonious Sangha. And so I think the most important thing is to see how, for example, our nuns, of course, they all come from Himalayan regions, Tibet and Ladakh, Bhutan, Nepal, Arunachal, all these Himalayan regions. But they come from village backgrounds where all villages work together, you know, and also within extended families and within the extended village, everybody helps everybody. Everybody works together. They're not really thinking so much about their own wishes and wants, but more how to act in harmony with the rest of the group. And so here, when any tasks need to be done, the teamwork is extraordinary, and everybody has such fun. But they all work together beautifully. I don't have to do anything. I just let them get on with it. So this ability to live together with each other and appreciate each other and respect each other and really, you know, not looking at each other's faults and weaknesses, but working with their strengths and the encouragement that comes of everybody coming together with teamwork It's very important. And to not be critical, not to look down on each other and to become too hierarchical, but to appreciate each other and the fact that you're all working towards a common goal, and to encourage each other. Because the Buddha, he said, Ananda said to the Buddha, I mean, a famous thing in the Pali Canon, where Ananda said to the Buddha, well, I've been thinking about it, and I think that good companionship is half the spiritual path. And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, it's the whole of the spiritual path. So we need good companionship, and especially in our modern day society. The Buddha also said that a person genuinely practicing Dharma is like a fish swimming upstream when the rest of the shoal is swimming downstream. And this was never more so than in our present society. And so those who really hold the Dharma in their heart are the fish swimming upstream. And so it's good if there are many fish swimming upstream together, and that those fish are in harmony, all going together, not fighting each other. And so this is a refuge. I mean, the community, the Sangha is a refuge. Let's not forget that. Of the three refuges, the Sangha is a very important refuge for people. And so we must be a refuge for people. And how to do that is by genuinely cultivating all the good qualities of the heart: generosity, patience, loving kindness, compassion, respect, and, you know, genuine altruistic wishing to benefit others. 10% ourselves, 90% the community. And in that way, when anybody comes in, also to welcome them, to be friendly, to be kind, not to ignore them. And to show everyone, yourselves and the world, human beings can live in harmony. They can be kind. They can be friendly. They can be funny. Laugh a lot. This is very important. Our nuns love to laugh. They're always laughing. Don't take yourself too seriously, right? And be kind. As the Dalai Lama says, the real aim is to have a good heart. And if at the end of the day, we don't have a better heart than other people, then what are we doing this for? If we cannot be kinder, more understanding, more compassionate, less irritable and difficult, what's the point? You know, I mean, however many books we read, however many wongs we take, however many retreats we do, at the end of the day, Atisha said, what we have to judge is whether our mental afflictions have decreased or not. If we are more irritable, more ready to be judgmental, more greedy and wanting power and attention, and in general, our ego has grown bigger, then it was a waste of time. We're on the wrong path. But, you know, it can, if we do it properly, then it naturally, things begin to loosen up. We get more relaxed, more at peace, more friendly, more kind, less judgmental. And then we know, yes, something is working inside, something is changing. So the community is the test of that, because when we're in a retreat by ourselves, we can sit there thinking, may all beings be well and happy, all beings be free from suffering, and feel that we're really getting somewhere and what kind, lovely people we are. Then we meet with other people. And that's the test of how actually much loving kindness, compassion, and so forth we have in our heart. So the more they push our buttons, the more, as we know, they are doing us a kindness, because they are showing us where our buttons are. And that is how we're going to cultivate our patience and our love, you know, not towards just the people who are nice, but also the people who are difficult. You know, they are our great practice, our Lojong practice. So This is what community is for, to rub each other up. You know, I give you one example to finish it. When I lived with the Togdens, with our yogis, one of them was a doctor. And so in Tibetan medicine, you put all the herbs together and they make a big lump. And then you prick off a little piece and throw it down. And so they're pricking a little bit like this. And then all those little balls, those little rough balls, they put in a big long sausage bag tied at both ends. And then for days they're going around like this. And the little balls are going around in the sausage bag, hitting against each other. And then after a few days, they open the bag and out come these perfect little round, shiny pills, which became little shiny pills because they were hitting against each other in a confined space. So that's the point, that we learn so much from the community. We learn so much from others. They are our real practice to become bright, shiny, beautiful, health-giving pills.
Thank you. To end here, I would like to, on behalf of everyone, just read your long life prayer. So, the long life prayer for Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, glorious, foremost and holy one, who through the blessings of the three jewels and the three roots spreads the amazing teachings of the meaning lineage far and wide across the world. May you live long and may your enlightened activities flourish and increase. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Ellen, thank you for everything. And thank your community for all their beautiful questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.